What is good, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a high ball fade tutorial on one of my clients. I haven't seen this client in about a year. He went to prison, I believe, for staying at a Golden Corral buffet too long. As you can tell, he was looking really rough, and it's good to see him. Let's go ahead and hop right in. First thing I like to do is start my first initial guideline above the eyebrow. As like I said, we are doing a high ball fade, so I just like to work my way around. One thing I like to do is start my guideline on one side and then stop it about halfway through and then go to the other side of the head and connect the lines together. I just feel like it helps me keep my lines symmetrical as I start my first initial guideline. As you can see here, I'm just removing the excess hair underneath my first initial guideline. One thing I will say, the trimmers that I'm using are kind of like my all-around trimmers. I use these for setting guidelines and removing bulk and really just everything because they're not really sharp and they're a good all-around clipper. And one thing I will say, you don't want a sharp clipper when setting your first guideline because you will have a hard time taking out that last line. My client asked for a 2 all-around against the grain. As you can see here, I'm just cutting the hair down all even. And one thing I like to do is I like to go over the head multiple times just to make sure that I've cut the hair down and there ain't no patches or anything like that. So I recommend to go over the hair at least twice to make sure it's an all even around cut. As you can see, I'm just passing over the head multiple times, just making sure everything's even. One thing I like about these clippers that I'm using, I really only use these just to cut down hair and really just debulk. I don't use these clippers for fading, and they're really a good clipper just for taking down bulk and cutting the hair down. So that's one thing I will say about these clippers. I don't know if a lot of barbers do this, just have a clipper for cutting down bulk, but I truly enjoy just having a clipper just for that. So I recommend people getting a clipper that's strong enough to just cut hair down, because it does make life a lot easier and it makes your job so much easier whenever you got a clipper that's powerful and you can use it just to cut about any type of texture of hair down. Next, we are going to begin the steps for fading. As you can see, I have no guard on my clipper and I have the lever halfway, going up about 1 inch in a flick out motion. And when it comes to setting in these guidelines, you want to keep your lines as consistent as possible as you're going around the head. As you can see, I'm going over my work one more time before turning my client. And that's one thing about me. I always like to double check my work before moving on to the next step. Next, we are throwing on our 0.5 guard with the lever closed, going up another inch in the flick out motion. As you can see, I'm going over my work again, keeping the same consistency like I was on my first guideline. There's something about people with ball fades too. I wanted to smack the crap out of his neck, but you know, we got to keep it professional. Next, we are throwing on the 1.5 guard, going up another inch with the lever closed. And a flick out motion. Same consistency like you were doing everything else. Since he had me cut his hair down with the 2, I can keep my 1.5 guard on and flick the lever open and blend into the top of the head, as you can see I'm doing now. And really it's just playing with the lever until you see the blend coming together. So I'm opening it up, close it halfway, sometimes close it, until you get that perfect blend. And make sure you're flicking your wrist too, and you'll see everything come together. You just gotta play around with it sometimes, but I promise you, you will see the blend come together. Now I have my one guard on, lever closed, and I'm going to be flicking out that 1.5 guard line out. And I like to start underneath the line and just flick out. And as I move up, gradually open the lever. And as you can see, the blend is coming together. Like I said previously, sometimes you just got to play with the lever, open it, close it until you see that line fade out. And don't forget to be flicking your wrists, because the fade is all in the wrist. As you can see, I'm just going over my work and just making sure everything is good. Definitely wasn't in a rush. And that's one thing I've learned about trying to be a good barber. You can't be in a rush whenever you're doing haircuts. You want to be detailed in every cut. Take your time, and I promise you it takes you a long way. Now we have my half guard on, lever closed, flicking underneath the 0.5 and just gradually fading that 0.5 out. And again, playing with the lever as we go up, open it up, close it halfway until you see that 0.5 line disappear. And again, I'm keeping the same consistent motion as I'm going around the head. One thing I'm doing too is using the corner of my clipper like an eraser, fading out that line. And by doing this, it allows you to go higher into the fade, knocking out some of them dark spots that you couldn't get with your previous guard. And you can see that little dark spot right there. I'm going over it right now. And as you can see, I closed my lever, boom, knocked it out right there. And just making sure I go over my work again. I'm repeating that just so y'all know it's always good to double check your work. But yes, as you can see, I knocked that line out, boom, hitting the other side, going up into the fade, and making my way back around. Now we're going to be taking that last line out. As you can see, I have no guard on my clipper, lever closed, flicking out that first initial guideline. As you can see, look at the wrist, flicking out, flicking out, flicking out. And my apologies for not cleaning my clipper before I even started to fade. My bad, y'all. I honestly just forgot. But, you know, there's no excuses. Next time, I will hold myself accountable and I won't forget to do that. As you can see, as I'm going higher into the fade, I'm opening my lever and kind of just blending out that line, as you can see, as I'm doing now. And I don't even want to say I don't want to say I'm playing with the lever no more. Let's just say I'm dancing with it, because that's kind of how I think of cutting hair. You know, you go with the beat, and you know, you hear a good song and you kind of just dance with the beat. So you basically dancing with the fade. And I love cutting this type of texture of hair because the blend just looks so nice, especially when the haircut is completed. I mean, look at that. Just dancing with it. On all my haircuts, I usually start out with a comb when it comes to fading, and really the only time I use a brush is towards the end of the fade when I'm taking out that bottom guideline, just because I feel like it just helps me out a little bit better. But whatever your preference is and you feel comfortable using, use it. But that's just me. I always use my brush last because it helps me clean off the hair better. My client wanted to cut his goatee down with the one guard, so as you can see I'm doing here, just cutting it down with the grain and passing through everything and getting everything nice and even. One thing I like to do too is throw on some holding spray on the edge up and let that sit there as I'm edging up the goatee. Brush all the hair down, take all the excess hair off, and just make sure everything's laying down how I want it to. And while that's drying up, bam, hitting the goatee, edging everything up. It saves time, so you don't have to pull out a blow dryer and dry it up. You can just let it air dry while you're doing this. As you can see, I'm just edging up the goatee, and you can't see it from this angle. You'll see it on this next angle. But when I'm edging up the mustache, I'm just following the outline of his lip, and I'm using the corner of the trimmer. And the best piece of advice I can give you when it comes to mustaches, goatees, beards is ask questions, because everybody likes something different. Like for example, like this client doesn't like his mustache real thin, where I have some clients that like their mustaches really thin. So you always got to remember that, y'all. Build rapport with your client. Ask questions, because you can never ask too many questions, because especially if it's a new client, if you don't know, don't just think you know, because you don't. You won't know until you ask them. So do not be afraid to ask questions. As you can see, using the corner of my trimmer coming down on the outside, on the outline of the lip. My client also wanted his chin hair lined up. As you can see, I'm starting on one side and just making a straight line to the other side. It's very important to use your mirror as well. So use your mirror to double check yourself, because sometimes if you don't, you have a possibility of your line or your edge up on the chin doing the Dougie, and you definitely don't want that. Use your mirror. All I'm doing here is removing excess hair, and I'm going to be squaring off that hair underneath the bottom lip. Now we're moving to my favorite part of the haircut, which is the lineup. These are my hitters, so you can see I'm just doing a tapping motion as I'm moving to the left. Since these clippers are so sharp, I really don't like to go back over my work too many times, because I can irritate the skin. One thing I hate that I didn't do was show y'all a good angle of me lining up the vertical bars, but I will do that in a later video just to show y'all how to do that correctly. But as you can see, I did line it up towards the end of his eyebrow, and going to the right side of his head, I started in the middle again, tapping to the right. And I do leave the excess hair on, because I like to go back with my soft trimmers and just go over the hairline one more time and remove all that hair. Now I came back with my soft trimmers, and I'm just going over the hairline one more time and removing all that hair that I didn't get to cut, and just gently tapping. This client also asked for enhancements. One thing I like to do after putting them on is I like to go through and straight razor my client, but this client asked not to be straight razor. So since I'm not doing that, I like to pass through the hairline one more time with my trimmer, my soft trimmer, of course, so we won't irritate the skin. I do that to kind of lock in the enhancements, and it just gives it that finishing touch. My client did want his ball fade to be skinned, so it's the last step I do. I like to take out my full shaver and flick out to that first beginning guideline. I feel like this is always easier for me, because I used to have a habit of leaving harsh guidelines whenever I did this step. I did struggle using the full shaver at first, but once I started to do it like this, it actually made my work a little bit more easier. So if you never tried it this way, go ahead and try it and let me know what you think in the comments. And the last thing is, don't forget to get the hair off the neck. There's been so many times where I've went to the barber and they didn't clean up my neck correctly. So please do not forget to clean your client's neck. And there you have it, folks. A crispy ball fade. Yes, I threw a little bit of oil on him to let that scalp shine. Yes, he's looking crispy. I know he is. Hopefully he doesn't go back to prison. I told him to stay away from them buffets, because that's what got him there the first time, and we definitely don't want him there again. But you already know my dude's looking handsome. Come on now. Thank y'all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.